What's up, y'all? Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined by the one and only Robert Cessna. We're inside the Eagle newsroom, coming to you on a Thursday afternoon. Cease, the Aggies are off this weekend, but all eyes will be focused Sunday morning when A&M's going to be in the college football playoff for the first time in program history. That's a pretty big milestone if you think about it.
I think people obviously are getting more excited every day to know there's going to be another game at Kyle Field, a very meaningful game because they're in the college football playoff. It took a little bit, and let's be honest, they'll never get over the loss to Texas in a lot of ways, but they can't take comfort in Texas is not going to be in there, and they're still having a great season. And you wonder who's going to come because it could be somebody that's never been here before. It could be a rematch of Notre Dame, which I don't think it'll work out that way. But in other words, can you imagine a playoff game here at Kyle Field? I mean, it's just going to be wild.
A playoff game at Kyle Field would be pretty dang crazy. But believe it or not, there's probably a scenario out there where A&M might get bumped into traveling in the first round. If you look at some things, we'll break into that here in a moment. As it stands right now, A&M's number 7. They'd be hosting Notre Dame in the first round, which we all know, of course, would be a rematch of Week 3's game that A&M won in pretty epic fashion up in South Bend. Notre Dame, vastly improved football team. They've been playing incredible. Jeremiah Love, he's even in the Heisman discussion right now. Probably not going to win it, but could get an invite to New York. That could be a challenging game for A&M if that holds pat, especially with how A&M has struggled at times to stop the run here in recent games.
Yeah, I kind of chuckle because even some of my relatives asked me about, and there's so much to be decided yet because Alabama's right ahead of Notre Dame. If they lose to Georgia like they're supposed to, then Notre Dame may go up. But what happens if BYU beat? There's so many ifs and ands, and we all know TV would love a rematch of Notre Dame and A&M. And you can't tell me that ESPN, that overwhelming thought of, wow, everybody knows Tech and A&M would be a good matchup. And you can't tell me they don't look, and suddenly it's easy to drop a team one spot to get the matchup. Why did Indiana play Texas Tech going back when Bobby Knight's first year at Texas Tech? It's all about TV.
It's all about TV. Hey, the committee did some kind of head-scratching things this week, though.
Every week.
Alabama jumped Notre Dame, even though Alabama beat a 5-7 Auburn team that they barely skated by. A&M fell all the way to 7. A little bit of a logjam there with 5 teams at 11-1. You're an AP voter, and whereas the college football playoff rankings, they obviously take the front seat at this point of the season. You still, in a way, have some input on where teams are ranked through the top 25. You had A&M at number 6. You had them behind Ole Miss, but ahead of Texas Tech. What was kind of the thought process there when you were filling out your ballot this week?
I just got to laugh because I read certain people, and if the first 6 games, AP and the coaches are the only ones, so everybody pays attention, and everybody likes to debate. Like you and I are debating, people might email or text us. Everybody likes to debate, and like a few people chuckle. Well, the AP and coaches poll actually come out before the committee, and they say the committee does pay, not necessarily pays attention, but they know how you vote. So get back to what you said is you can't lose late. I don't care what sport you're in, don't lose late because everybody drops you down because they forget what you did up front. When I looked at A&M's body of work, Notre Dame, huge victory. A&M did everything they were supposed to, but the bottom line is they played a lot of teams that don't have a good record in the SEC. SEC is the best conference, but they're still bad teams, even in the best conference. And I think A&M's record is like 12. The teams that A&M beats,
12 and
44. The teams that A&M beats. And any way you look at it, that's not good. So here's my deal. On my deal, I said, okay, Ole Miss played better teams when you look at in the league, whatever. Texas Tech, Big 12. And I said, okay, Texas Tech has to prove to me that if they beat BYU next week and they're the league champ, I'm going to bump them ahead of A&M because they'll be a conference champ. So I put A&M 6. I put Texas Tech 7th, knowing this week coming up, if Texas Tech wins, I'll probably jump them, and I'll be right in line with everybody else. And I know Mike Elko talked about that yesterday, and you can say, yeah, the media, we all have our eye test, so to speak, but then I could look the coaches also at A&M, his peers, and he's voting as well. And my guess is he didn't vote himself 7th, so he probably voted himself a little bit. But his other buddies, and there's a lot of SEC coaches vote on that. And once again, it's pecking order. And I do like one thing Elko said yesterday. Just put the football down, and he'll get a chance to prove. If he wins 3 and 4 more games, I like his chances.
It's pretty crazy, though, the difference between 6 and 7. Yeah, it is pretty crazy because you think about it and you go, okay, A&M's going from possibly playing ACC champion Virginia or maybe even like North Texas, Tulane, James Madison to Notre Dame or Alabama or Miami or BYU all of a sudden. That is a vastly different kind of matchup in the first round.
Yeah, and I have to laugh about all of it because I do vote, so I'm staying up late Saturday night watching Notre Dame play Stanford in a worthless game. And the announcer's talking, they talked to Freeman, and he has starters in at the middle of the fourth quarter. It was like 42-7 or 35-7.
Style points.
And he said the committee has shown that they do pay attention to how bad you beat somebody. And that's not what college football should be about. And I go, I can't believe Freeman's risking. They even had Love go in for a couple carries. I said, risk an injury. And then the next Tuesday, I see that Notre Dame gets jumped. And he said, hey, we got to worry about Miami. He goes, the committee might go ahead and bump us, and we might be left out. And I go, he knew what he was talking about. You just don't know. So he was trying to not run up the score, but show that he's a good team.
The way I look at it, I don't have any problem with Georgia being 3. Georgia's a pretty dang good football team. Look at Texas Tech, and I go, okay, I see why Tech's ahead of A&M. You talk about Big 12 versus SEC. Well, to Tech's credit, they've beaten the brakes off of just about everybody they've played in the Big 12 this season. One loss was to Arizona State.
Didn't have their quarterback.
They didn't have their quarterback that game, which was a huge deal.
But I'd like to see A&M how they had done without Marcel Reed at, let's say, Arkansas on the road or even Missouri.
Sure, but the way that they basically manhandled BYU and USC, very impressive way that they won those games. So Tech's margin of victory, I think, makes sense for why they got propelled up to number 4. Oregon, you look at the metrics, Oregon's a very efficient team on both sides of the football. Only loss this year was to Indiana by 3 points. Indiana's pretty dang legit, I would say, at 12-0. The one, you could go back and forth with A&M and Ole Miss. It was going to be interesting to see if the committee docked Ole Miss at all for losing Lane Kiffin. I think that everyone was really intrigued how they'd view that. And to the committee's point, 2 years ago, Florida State got dinged because Jordan Travis didn't play those last 2 games. And they had a game and a half sample size to see what Florida State looked like without a Heisman Trophy contending quarterback. And there was a lot of up in arms about how that all fell out. But in Ole Miss's scenario this year, there's no game to go on. There's no sample size to look at what Ole Miss looks like right now without Lane Kiffin as head coach. And oh, by the way, they stabilized things pretty quickly with Pete Golding coming in as the full-time head coach. The one thing that I will say that you look at things, and somebody asked Hunter Yurachek, I think it was actually Travis Brown that asked Hunter about this on the conference call, was what gave Ole Miss the nod over A&M. And he said that the committee felt like there was just a little bit more offensive metrics that favored Ole Miss versus A&M. And you go and look, yes. My only thing is Ole Miss, their power conference game was Washington State, which had an asterisk by it because we know Washington State's not truly a power conference team anymore, but because of scheduling, you let it slide because things are changing. A&M went and beat Notre Dame on the road. Ole Miss barely beats a not that great Washington State team. And then you look at some of the common opponents that A&M and Ole Miss have played. It just seemed like A&M, you compare side to side. Ole Miss, they beat LSU, scrape by and win that game. A&M kind of beat the brakes off of them, but, you're splitting hairs at that point. I could see it either way. I probably would have put A&M at 6 in my personal opinion, but you see why they fell to number 7 too.
Yeah, it was one of those things, flip a coin, A&M, Ole Miss, and I felt like Ole Miss did enough. When you look at last year, they faded. They lost a big game at Florida. And then I thought they might get docked for Lane Kiffin, but my thought was they up the defensive coordinator Golding real quick. And here's the deal is, I felt that team's going to probably play harder than ever without when they lose Kiffin. And once again, it's a lot about the eye tests and this and that. And I don't have any problem if you move all that. You could say Oregon. Let's be honest. Oregon made everybody's attention, including mine. Oh, you went to Penn State and won. Game late with a game on the line. Penn State's horrible, it turns out. But yet, and I have to laugh, but yet I mispronounced the guy's name, Hunter June, whatever.
You're a check.
He talks about, I forget which team it was. He says, well, they have only beaten one team now that's on our top 25. Well,
it was Vanderbilt. He was talking about how Vanderbilt.
And I'm saying, well, yeah, it's like, well, then Oregon, the Penn State game shouldn't count, but it does. It's like A&M. The reason a lot of these SEC teams are not good is because A&M beat them. And it's like the A&M in the 90s when they were really good and the SEC and the Big 12 was down. It wasn't their fault. You only can beat the teams you play. And this is what we love about college football. Come on, we're talking about it. I'd love to see 16 teams in it. We're going to get there. I'd like to see Pavia in the tournament. He might lose in the first round, but at least we'll see that. So, but this is what makes college football. You sit there with your wife, your kids. I'm talking to them. Well, you can argue. I'm talking to Alex. He'd have a different top 25. My son Randy would have a different top 25. And we don't know which one of us are right until we play.
Randy'd have the Cougs in the top 15.
Yeah, he'd have the Cougars in the top 15.
But look, they're with the committee and their precedents, though, and they said that idle teams can move up and down.
I know, yeah.
Is there? I don't think there's not. You can't necessarily dismiss the notion that A&M and Ole Miss could maybe flip-flop places this Sunday.
Well, because then they could say, based on the results, the teams that A&M played knocked them up a spot.
Right.
Once again, you can talk about the eye test all you want to. I guess I could be in the committee because I could talk out of both sides of my mouth, and then your guys like, well, hey, let's do that. But you're right. We've seen this before in TCU a few years ago. Once again, it could happen. And if you're Freeman, you can see why you're worried. Or Miami might get jumped because, then suddenly, this happened and what happened. And you only have to be out by one. If you're that team on the outside looking in, you're right about A&M. Then what if A&M gets bumped down somehow tonight? Let's say BYU beats Tech, and they still say, we had Tech ahead of them, and BYU's a really good team, so we're going to leave Tech ahead of A&M. We're going to put BYU up there, and then suddenly A&M is 9, or just some wild stuff. And I don't think that will happen. But once again, when you're looking at the old eye test, and then there's not like you can go to the Supreme Court and say we're going to get it overturned. I mean, it's like there's nothing you can do. I will say I don't think there's any way Texas and Vanderbilt can get in when I look at those deals. Even though I see Vanderbilt try to schedule a game.
That would have been awesome.
I go, was it Blinn College? I mean, play out at Bryan High.
I think Aggies can find solace in the fact that Texas is boxed out at number 13.
Yeah, lucky 13 for them. The 12th man is glad that they're number 13.
The doomsday scenario, though, is that Alabama and BYU win this weekend.
Correct.
And jump A&M in the rankings. I find it hard to believe that would not happen. I could see Alabama going all the way into the top 4 somehow if they win.
I'm surprised in our prog panel how many people picked Alabama, and I'm looking at Alabama looked so bad to me last week against Auburn, but I realize it's a rivalry game, and you do bad things. Look at A&M. A&M wasn't itself in a rivalry game, so to speak. It happens. So say, man, if Alabama beats Georgia. Then what does that do to all the metrics? Because, okay, let's say you move Alabama up, Georgia, and I'm talking about what is the ripple effect. Who might move one or two spots as well because of they get credit for beating Alabama, or they lose because Georgia drops down. Because right now, to me, Georgia looks like a water moccasin. But if Georgia basically loses at home, what does that do to the metrics to everybody else?
And if their only two losses are both to Alabama, there is no reason for Georgia to be ahead of Alabama.
That's what I'm saying. So how does that change everything? That all of a sudden Vanderbilt's in, and then you're like, what?
I think that just looking at the rankings, I think the only path that A&M has to get to number 6, which would be an advantageous spot, without flip-flopping Ole Miss, is if Alabama loses to Georgia, BYU beats Texas Tech, and A&M somehow gets in front of both BYU and Texas Tech. That'll be a really telling sign of how the committee views the Big 12 as well.
It could happen. Once again, as we're sitting here, we've seen it happen before. What happens if BYU and Texas Tech plays this 42-41 overtime game? Then everybody goes, oh man, both those teams are really good. And once again, you're talking about a group that has shown that eye test means a lot. And I'm not going to say that's not going to happen. I don't think that'll happen, but I'm just saying there's everything out there when you've got a group that's basically has had left no parameters that you can say, oh, this matters. You beat somebody head on, this matters. You do this, anything could go.
The interesting thing will be, though, if somehow Notre Dame and Miami actually get butted up next to each other in the rankings. Does Miami finally surpass Notre Dame? And if A&M stays at 7, and that's where that last spot comes in. Notre Dame and Miami, I think A&M would probably take playing Miami in a heartbeat. Canes are a good team, but Notre Dame's really rolling. That's kind of my thing too, is I'm like, okay, you look at it today. What's their prerogative with the committee? They're trying to get the best 12 teams in. That's what they say, right? And there's parameters within that. Top 5 conference champions go automatically. We know that. But look, Notre Dame, probably a better team today than Miami is, but it's hard to dismiss the notion that Miami beat Notre Dame on the field, even if it was in week 1, and there's been a ton of things happen since then. That's got to account for something.
Here's my thought. It's funny because this is what makes college football. If I was on the committee and you're telling me you're taking Notre Dame or you're taking Miami, I would say I believe Notre Dame is so much better than Miami. And my thinking is, I've covered a lot of football, and you can't judge a team on September 1st versus December 1st.
Look at Alabama.
There's too many injuries, too many people get better, this and that. And I thought Miami, man, I was so impressed with Miami early in the year. But I always said, give time for Mario Cristobal to screw it up. They just don't finish well. And then I watched them lose to Louisville because we were up in Arkansas. Very impressed with Louisville, but man, that hurt Miami. Then Louisville falls apart. And I'm saying, okay, Miami's got a bad loss there. Then they also lost, was it to North Carolina or North Carolina? They lost another bad loss. And I go, they're not a good team right now. And I get it. Notre Dame hasn't really played anybody good except A&M and really lost to them. It's hard even with 12 games because there's too many games you're throwing out that you just don't, but yet you got to count them. My point being is that's why it's eye test. Right now, I wouldn't want, if I'm a coach, man, give me Miami. Do not give me Notre Dame.
Something that could help A&M that I was thinking about, they've got one ranked win. Missouri's right on the cut line of being in the top 25 or not. They're going to go through and they're going to make all those rankings. And then what the committee does is they go through and they scrub it. They go through and, hey, let's revisit 6, 7, and 8, right? And if Missouri gets in at that 25th spot, say North Texas loses, they're 24th right now. That opens up a spot. And if Missouri gets in at that last spot, that gives A&M 2 ranked wins.
Good.
That could be a big thing that
could be enough.
Maybe split some hairs if the committee goes back and scrubs that a little bit.
Well, I said you just never know, and that's why when you talk about an eye test, and it could happen, and suddenly you're seeing one spot, but once again, that one spot would be so much psychological. Talk to a lot of people, just people, and I go out eat once a week, once a day, whether I need a lot. A lot of Aggies don't want to play Notre Dame. And just like I said, to me, Notre Dame's a better team. And unfortunately, you don't want to put that mindset in everybody, because then it does permeate. I don't care if those players are out at Bright, whatever, they're on their phones all the time. I don't think they want to play Notre Dame. They know how good Notre Dame is, and I get it. In the competitor in you want to beat the best you can bet. But maybe playing a new team, a different team would be good. You don't want anything negative. I don't care what you do in life, but there's negativity, because a lot of people say, oh, A&M doesn't want to play Notre Dame. Or if they've never played them yet, A&M saying, we want to play Notre Dame. They beat us last year. We want to get them. Whereas now that's on Notre Dame's side. You don't want that. And I don't think the committee should put A&M and Notre Dame together, because it's already played once this year. And I don't like that. And I get it, TV. I don't think A&M should be matched. I think the committee go, okay, boys, let's move it. Let's move A&M up one, or let's move Notre Dame down one. And let's be honest, they get a few bourbon drinks behind closed doors. Who knows what they're going to do?
Who knows what they're going to do? But hey, we're going to know what they did at 11:30 on Sunday morning. I know they say it's 11, but let's be honest. They're not going to start it until like 11:30. It's a made-for-TV event. So you'll go to the early service at your church is what we're trying to tell you.
Well, or either that, or they advertise, we'll take a break during the sermon to see where A&M's play. You know, it'd be great. Or I'll tell you what, we'll pass the collection plate while they're doing that, and maybe
somebody has the phone
Exactly,
yeah. Well, hey, we're going to be breaking down all of the coverage on A&M's first-round matchup on Sunday afternoon, God willing, and we'll see who A&M's playing.
Exciting times.
It's exciting time. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M football and other sports as well. Big volleyball match this weekend as well.
And he'll be there.
And I'll be there. We'll see you next time.